Meh. That's what we hear.
It's weird. It was like it was echoing in my
weird
ears. I
echoing
heard
for
it,
Jeffrey.
and then I heard it again.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com, the world's leading Jeep and off-road podcast. As voted on by my mother. So we are, my name is Neil in Grandma's Couch Studio.
And he's sure of that.
I am sure about that. And I am joined with...
Jeff Sermonti, our producer.
And Scott Brown, the mad scientist over there. If we didn't confuse our listeners just now.
Wow, I was confused. Some nice band of white hands. And
I like to keep them on their toes.
To say
Never
the
know what
least.
Scott's going to do.
Right? Never.
You didn't come up with something for Scott, though. Usually, he's janitorial services or, a painter of sorts. Or
No, Jeff's on the spot.
Right, I know.
Today he was
You don't even know what he was doing.
No, because he was
we
he
were
was
in
muted. He was muted today. Muted Scott Brown because when we were recording the earlier podcast, The American Hustle, Scott, we're in this new fancy enclosed studio. We've got the sliding door up. It's pretty well soundproof.
As thanks for our listeners, right? A credit to them for making it worthwhile and helping support the signage and the studio in the process.
Scott was off in the shop working. I have no idea on what because we couldn't see him. We couldn't hear him. And he said the same. He couldn't hear us. He was like, where'd they all go?
Yeah. He used to like listening to the American Hustle, which, if you don't know, is a really cool kind of an insider piece on what makes SFJ 4x4 tick. Big conversation on entrepreneurship, leadership, and just all around being a good person between Jeffrey and I. We should bring Scott into that one day.
Oh, absolutely.
He could share a couple things.
He has really good insight on stuff that just surprises you all the time.
Scott has the best ideas.
He does.
Sometimes.
That should be a t-shirt.
In the comments, Joe O'Brien is first saying good morning, gentlemen, and Roy is good morning, fellas.
Yeah, good morning, Joe. Good morning, Roy. So this is episode 132.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. And as mentioned previously,
I'm not sure.
I think good job, producer. As mentioned previously, we are 6 continents wide. We're still waiting for Antarctica. If you're listening, let us know.
Yeah.
Or if you have some illustrious experience that is waiting ahead of you. You want some travel experience. Come on, go to Antarctica. Download and give it a listen.
Will it work if somebody flies over? Does it count then?
How many people are flying over the South Pole?
I don't know. Just asking questions.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think they have to be there downloading it. Is there Wi-Fi or internet in Antarctica?
Yeah, they're satellite.
They're satellite.
They're satellite. I watched a special on Antarctica once. It's pretty cool. There's like 112 people who call Antarctica home.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool. So today's podcast, we will be talking about what will you do for a Klondike bar,
right.
which is a fun take on how do you pay for your Jeep parts.
Yeah,
really what it comes down to. So we'll be talking about that kind of a social piece, if you will, and talking about some of your guys' occupations, our tell-all. Last week, we follow up on our HIPAA rule of customers. This week, we'll actually be talking about you. So there, take that. Additionally, a lot of people were interested as to why I had a lightsaber on the show last week. And maybe by the end of the program today, we'll talk about that as well. And hang in there towards the end because we're changed up our process a little bit. We will do a brief outro following our topic at hand, and we will cut to our weekend update. So if you want to kind of hear what's going on in our personal projects, because we are all Jeep and builder and outdoor enthusiasts of sorts. So maybe you want to hear what's going on in our lives. You'll want to hang in there for that. We'll talk about next week's topic towards the end too. Is that correct?
Yep.
So you'll have to hang in there and figure out. I will tell you, it's technically inspired. So for sure. So what would you do for a Klondike bar?
Like, subscribe, and post a review about this show.
So if you do that, you're going to get Jeep parts. It's not from me, but not from me. And that's not directly, but it's like You know, like Jesus loves you. Like and share
Sure.
and say amen. You know, so
Information is kind of like Jeep parts.
That's true.
fair, fair. So yeah, you know, like and subscribe, and then
We'll
you
help
know,
you figure out the right Jeep parts.
Yes,
That's
yep.
true, too.
One of our listeners reached out once from Indianapolis, I believe, wants help buying the right Jeep. You know, so we can do that. But you know, like, subscribe, and share this with somebody else. Let them know all the cool Jeep stuff. Or if you're in kind of a Jeep club and you're watching us live on Facebook or YouTube, and remember, you can always do that Monday, 10:19 a.m. Drop it into your club page and let it play there.
Especially if it's a Jeep page in Antarctica. Yeah.
That was so good.
He actually
tried.
worked through and pronounced it correctly.
Yes, and I wasn't ready. He was like, especially a Jeep page, because immediately my mind went to like Cat Lovers Anonymous page or something.
Right.
Which I think is probably applicable for us as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
Based sometimes on my stream of consciousness and talking, but
Jeep videos are like cat videos at this point for you.
that's true. It's true. It's what it's all the internet's good for. at
Love
this
a
point.
good cat video.
Yeah. Anyways, me too.
It just
I love
Wow,
cats.
we are
And
It's
so
lucky end.
derailed off a
I'm
topic at
just
this
about
point.
to knock my mic off the
got
stand.
excited about cats.
I'm not mature enough to continue this conversation.
No.
Because
I already know where you're going.
I like kitty cats as
Especially
well.
with our topic.
What would you do for a Klondike bar?
Oh boy.
And I don't mean only fans or only Jeep fans. I heard
sure you
Scott
don't.
was selling feet picks for Jeep parts at one
No.
point.
No.
Oh,
If
okay.
anybody was, Jeff was.
No, it's definitely the guy with the Crocs
The
and
Crocs.
socks.
The Crocs.
Those
and
are the feet
socks.
pics that you're going to get from us.
Oh, bleh. That's, you know, so I think it's funny as far as what would you do for a Klondike bar? Because, you know, I've been around the industry for a hot minute, and I think it's kind of funny because I very much remembered being jealous of some of our hardworking machinists, fabricators, maybe some of that stereotypical blue collar industry, right? In the industrial sector, because I remember
They could create.
they could create,
just
yes,
make parts.
and if your machine was slow or not doing a run for whatever the company was doing, I knew so many people who were like, oh, you know, my boss doesn't care if I turn down this tube and I add these threaded inserts, and, you know, I take a few minutes after my lunch while this machine over here is running. I
Yeah.
can make my own steering, or I can make my own control arms. And, oh, I have access to scrap steel or drops. And
Yeah.
I remember being so jealous of those guys. Because specifically, I mean, that's not the world I came from. You know, my
Right.
parents were teachers, family were farmers, you know, and yes, farmers create, but in a very different way.
Yes.
Right. In a very different way. And sometimes farm fixes are about as short term as possible.
Yeah.
So I definitely know that that's where our industry kind of originated from, that these folks who were already in some manufacturing capacity or machining or fabricating, they really kind of, in my opinion, led the charge to get their Jeep parts by
Especially in that day.
back right in that day. Now, I think that anybody who was around 10 years ago remembers the frustration of online influencers and brand ambassadors.
Yep.
And there was a bunch of misnomer when it came to how much those online individuals were actually, how much compensation, both tangible and financial, those individuals were getting.
They're definitely doing it for Jeep parts.
They were, but I don't know that they were actually getting cheap Jeep parts or free Jeep parts, typically speaking.
It's a better story if they got free Jeep parts.
Well, they told everybody they got free Jeep parts. You know what I mean? They told everybody that they were.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of brand ambassador arguments online, or a lot of criticism pointed at these folks and being like, well, I wish somebody else would pay to, you know,
yeah.
blah, 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 blah.
Sponsors.
I'm actually going to jump to the comments
Sponsors.
really fast here because we got a bunch. So Giaga Jeeper said good morning. Bill McWilliams said good morning. Andrew said good morning, Jeepers. And then Bill's saying, that's my life. 20 plus years I work with stainless steel every day.
Yep, exactly.
Ooh.
Right. And
Scott just made a new friend.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
Stainless steel, right? There's the jealousy all over again, But and I think that was a challenge because I remember coming there actually being some contention between the builders,
Mm-hmm.
the ambassadors, and the buyers,
Yes.
right? And this idea of fairness or unfairness of what they were doing for their Klondike bars.
The grass is always greener.
That's right.
There it is.
That is right. The grass is always greener because I don't know that that anybody of those particular group had it good over any of the other ones.
It's all perception.
It's all perception, right?
So when we talk about like what jobs our customers are doing, we've got several. Like we've got the guy that does networking and IT remotely.
Mm-hmm.
We've got someone high up with Adobe.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I think it's valuable because we had the conversation about HIPAA last week.
Yep.
And I think it's valuable to say that folks that we share their occupation today have either already shared. So
Right.
The one individual, actually, we did a kind of a special interest story on.
Yeah.
The other one was actually on the podcast with us at one point.
Yep.
So anybody that we're going to talk about today is arguably, kind of allowed
they've
us.
That, and I'm not
They've
going
signed
to,
the form.
I'm also not going to clarify who that customer is or whose Jeep it is. I'm just talking in general. These are some of the jobs of people that we work with on a regular basis.
And I have, shared before, but one of our most, and this individual, I know I have explicit permission to kind of talk about his story, and we've shared a lot of life Jeep experiences. One of our earliest
Joe, I'm not going to
big
talk about that.
customers was specifically, and he had a huge investment in his Jeep, and he was a warehouse tile packer.
He was here today.
Oh, was he?
Yes.
He's so fast.
Batman.
He
Oh, by the way, he's coming in today to drop off that the item he borrowed.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Forgot to tell you that.
Oh, well, there we go. That makes. Oh, well,
We were locked in our studio, so we didn't even know he
You
was.
should use past tense because that's already happened.
Good thing I was well versed on what was happening today on the schedule. That's what would you do for a Klondike bar. So I know, he was one of he taught me a lot of valuable lessons because for him, it was not necessarily about the fact that he was independently wealthy. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, that, that any of the normal criticism lobbed at the must be nice crowd. Right.
Just kept working.
He just kept working. So
Put stuff
twofold.
away.
One, I think twofold. One, he's an incredibly consistent individual, right? So he just held down pretty much the same occupation for decades. Two, he made himself invaluable at his workplace. So yes, he worked in the warehouse. Yes, he loaded tile and packaged tile for shipments, but he did it in such a way that his metrics for broken goods upon delivery were so low that he, despite making good money after decades of employment, it was because he was such an asset to the business because he made sure that he did his job with excellence, right?
I'm going to go to the comments for a second because this is a really fun comment. Well, first, Eric said, "Good morning, gentlemen." And then Two Door Explorer says, "Good morning, y'all. I'm camped outside of Back Way to Crown King, sitting by a fire watching."
Perfect.
And then Fred says, "Good morning" as well. But so the campfire thing, we need to do a campfire podcast episode.
Well, so there's the challenge. I was actually thinking about this, and we'll expand a little bit more later on with.
Grass is always greener. I'm just thinking about
I
sitting
was
by
gonna
the
say,
fire
grass
right
is always
now
greener.
would be really fun.
It would be. We'll expand upon this on our weekend updates, but I was thinking and I do want to hear what your idea was, but we have to do our one match challenge. Like we have to do it.
He just threw away all the kindling. Like he's like, "Oh, we're never going to do this challenge."
We have to do it.
I know.
Literally tried again to start a fire and it went out. So
I'm not sure.
I'm just a forfeit now.
You can't forfeit.
So I wasn't sure. So Jeff, and I look forward to hearing what your intention is. Do you want us to bring like a little fake like electric fireplace in there? I had one of those.
No,
I might
no,
still
we're
have
doing
one.
in the field episode. We're gonna have to
Now that
record
we've
That's what I'm
finally-
after
saying.
hours sometime
now we
around a
finally
fire
have
with.
a full box. It's all sealed up. Now he wants to go outside. Where
Heck yeah, with my field recorder.
There's, where there's tons of
Oh my
noise
God.
now.
That's how we work to support our Jeep parts, right? So and that's what I was kind of talking about with this individual. He did his job with excellence, and it was not the most illustrious position, but he made himself invaluable in his workplace, and therefore was able to prioritize his investments. Additionally, like I said, he's pretty consistent. He really didn't eat out. He didn't take lavish trips. He really didn't do, much except for invest in the Jeep and then allow that Jeep to be his vessel to participating in Jeep Jamboree USA runs and a number of local off-road activities and meeting more people. And that was then his vessel, his medium to kind of, start to branch out. But that was only after decades and decades of work of just kind of grinding it out in his quote unquote normal life, So one of the things I think was fun, Greg, in the earliest years, he used to have a desk as well here. He doesn't really do a desk now. He just has sprawling toolboxes.
Yes.
But on the side of
Yeah,
his
he has
desk,
a whole wall at this point.
Yes. His desk originally used to say, "I work to support my Jeep," right? So what is it that people do? And arguably the individual that I had mentioned, I mean, he was kind of doing the same thing. He'd work to support his Jeep at that point. We have a number of people, and they're not the most spectacular employments. Now, we have had a number of people who are higher up in corporate America. We had a number of independent business owners.
But even so, even the ones that are higher up in corporate America, they worked hard to get there.
Absolutely.
And many of them still work hard and they make sacrifices elsewhere
Yes.
to be able to support their Jeep habit.
Yes. And that is I work to support my Jeep is kind of a legitimate thing, because of the really interesting nature of this niche community that we belong to. And it's funny because other people on the outside looking in, I got tagged into a post recently. Somebody saw a quote about 50 Jeeps down by this, back road the other day, and they were kind of like losing their mind, like, what are these Jeeps doing, And I got tagged into the post, and I was able to elaborate that it's one of our local clubs going on a fall inspired, drive. But it's interesting because our culture, people from the outside looking in take notice of it, because realistically, Jeeps aren't the most practical vehicle, right? I feel like a Honda Accord or Civic or a Toyota Camry, that's just like a practical vehicle.
Meh.
Jeeps don't really make sense to the average consumer. Don't you think?
Blasphemy.
Well, I think it's the truth, right? People
yeah.
know the Jeep. If you listening might be the Jeep gal or guy at your workplace. You might have a handful of you, and you all park near each other towards the kind of the back outskirts of the parking lot.
And then the snowstorm, you park on the snow.
You park on the snow or on the curb, kind of cattywampus, right? And so when it comes to employment, the average consumers are looking in at you or us because you're part of a niche community, And so it doesn't always make sense, but realistically, our vehicles need constant maintenance because they're not that Toyota Camry.
Right.
So,
but in my opinion, it's easier maintenance than that Toyota Camry.
Well, obviously I'm biased.
Well, yeah,
but I think of our Jeeps as just giant Lego sets, honestly.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you guys have done yourselves?
I've killed Jeeps for Jeep parts.
Ouch. Yeah.
Well, you did too.
I was gonna say you can't be that offended.
I never phrased it that way. I mean, he was ready.
He was locked and loaded.
He was locked and loaded, and a most Halloween inspired way possible. You're absolutely right. You have, and I have. And I feel like I've taken pretty good care of you for killing Jeeps for me professionally for Jeep parts. That's right. We used to do some good horse trading.
And then he always got the parts back.
That's true. I knew it was a solid deal because we would horse trade for parts.
Yes.
You would disassemble a Jeep and say, "Hey, I really want I'd buy the Jeep for parts," and then you say, "Well, I really want the transfer case off it or something," for some exciting project you were
some
gonna
mad
do.
scientist reason.
Right.
And that was the early years, so I had a big ambition in my head, but not always the ability to create the image in my head. So,
And how many times did those just sit in the garage and then,
I don't wanna talk
the
about it.
Well, that's
last
what he's saying
couple
about-
years you just sold them?
Well, but even
Or
just
gave them
6
back to
months
you.
to a year, I got them back in some other type of horse trade
Yes.
or resale or something. Absolutely. That was
red
Scott,
ball
my
has
MO.
changed, and at that point, and I wanted some other red ball.
Yes.
So then I had to.
Shiny object, right?
Yes.
And you were done. You wanted to get out of that transfer case that
Yes.
you no longer needed for that.
I mean,
that quirky
in my
project.
defense, I did build, my wife's Jeep that way. I built a Willie's Jeep that way and sold that off. So some did get created, not all finished. That was a rumor that no Browns did not finish cars, but I've tried to do better. Generational trauma there.
Well, it's like carry the torch of generational trauma.
Oh, yes.
I mean, and that's tough. I think the challenge that I see is when you have multiple vehicles and multiple projects, it's easy to kind of, again, look in from the outside and go, hey, cast judgment of sorts, right?
100%.
But you originally wanted to do some drafting, right? So you were actually traditionally employed at one point outside the automotive community.
Well, so the funny thing is I've always done car stuff. I joke around that I was dragging a jack around in my diapers, which may be true.
It's actually true, I think.
But anyway, my dad beat into my head that I was not allowed to be a mechanic for my occupation, or do body work for my occupation. Basically, nothing that we did as a hobby I was allowed to do for a 9-to-5 job.
Did he beat it in your head too hard? And
So I just wasn't one of those. I didn't really push the envelope as a kid. So okay, Dad, I'll listen to you. Now I'm gonna look into what else is interest to me. So I always liked to draw. I always liked to do art. And so when I figured out you could do mechanical drawing, I was kind of intrigued. So I took a class in my junior high level. It was, literally a piece of plywood and a T-square. Not very complicated, but it introduced me to, the way you drew things in a 3D view and that kind of stuff, and kind of took a 3D object and made it flat onto a piece of paper, and I actually enjoyed it. So went ahead and did that for my vocation in high school, and then did work for a while outside of that for doing drafting and drawings and that kind of stuff. But what I kind of hated about that was that there was no, 20, 30 years ago, you could have done that for the rest of your life and vested. But now it's in that market specifically, it's every 5 years. Those people change, they move places, they go get different jobs. There's head hunting happening. And I'm old fashioned. I just wanted somewhere to go work and toil and build. And that's just not in that market. So here I am.
Well, yeah.
doing exactly what you said that you were
My
not
dad
supposed
Well,
to do.
I think the problem,
Wasn't allowed to
and so Fred, which was Scott's father, Fred had a different kind of perspective on the world because of his own experience working to support his car habit, his car truck habit.
Yeah,
and
what he would do for a Klondike Bar.
right, and I think that's very different than what Scott was willing to do, because Scott finds himself in with a different set of both physical tools and social tools, and in a very different work environment than Fred Over found himself in.
Yeah.
So I think he made a lot of those, concepts or statements based on what he knew to be true at the time.
Well, that, and there's always the old adage of you shouldn't do your passion as your job, because then you lose the passion that you
There's
had
which-
because now
There's
it's work.
rumor that you'll have burnout, which I'm still waiting for.
And that's
Right.
And I actually, that's a fantastic transition because I am still waiting for it too. You
Yeah,
know what
right.
I mean? Like,
And that's why I say it's an old adage, because I think people are happier when they do their passion for work.
and I just,
As long as they're really into it, I think that's a thing. I think that's not. We're definitely not the norm.
right.
There is people that will get tired of stuff.
Right, right.
I don't know when that's or if that's ever going to happen for me. But that's how I literally introduce myself at this point. Is like I eat, sleep, drink, cars, Jeeps, and automotive 24/7, 365, and there's no end in sight kind
Right.
of thing.
And I think that's fascinating.
Go ahead.
Well, I just think it's fascinating because I heard that too, and it was like, don't make your passion your career. And yet we also hear all the time, if you find something that you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Correct.
And I jokingly say, like, I wanted to pay for my G parts, so I literally started a business dealing with G parts, and it was. I always said I wanted to create the business that I needed when I was younger and trying to get into this, where somebody could educate me, where somebody could point me in the right direction. And it's not that they had like a house brand that they were trying to sell me into, or the cheapest possible product, or a product that they made the most margin on. And so they were swaying me in their talking points.
Yep.
I wanted to be the business that I needed. And I have yet to tire of that as well. Are there good days and bad days just like anybody else? Absolutely.
Still work.
It is, but I always say the worst day here is still better than the best days elsewhere.
Yeah.
In other jobs.
So I wanted to just try to get us caught up on comments here. Giago Jeepers had said you either love him or hate him. Michael said, good morning, SFJ.
Good morning.
Tony said, when the egghead IT guy shows up in a mud-covered brick with a tent on the back. Leslie Ann said morning.
Good morning, Leslie.
Fred talking about the project Jeeps and killing Jeeps to make new Jeeps. You mean like the 6 project Jeeps I have and none can be drove? Too many parts to decide how the final build should be.
Yep. Understand that.
Yep. And then Amanda said, good morning, guys, and have a great week. So
Good morning. Thank you. And we are thankful that all of you are able to join us. And if you are listening in your ear holes, you are just as important, and you're listening at a later time. We're so thankful for you because ultimately all those great metrics we talk about are actually because of our dedicated listening base, again, in 6 continents. That really makes this valuable, and we love hearing from you and seeing you at shows and talking about this program with you. So understand that if you have the opportunity, you can jump on and join these folks in the comments live and kind of share and talk and so on and so forth.
And on the passion topic, Tony just commented saying, not going to lie, if I had to turn wrenches for a living, I probably wouldn't like wrenching anymore. Working in tech has limited the amount of tech I have in my personal life. Now,
See, and I get that.
And I get that too, but since I started here, I actually enjoy wrenching more now that I know more about it.
And and I think that's interesting when we talk about this conversation of what would you do for a Klondike bar, because there are going to be people who it's almost therapeutic to go out and it's an angry therapy, but it's almost therapeutic to go out and wrench at this point, because you go, and I think I found myself in that position because whether people fully know, a lot of people make snap judgments based on the fact that I own the company that I own. And so they think, oh, my parents were mechanical because obviously family Jeeps, or they claim, they think I bought into something, or we had some big donor money or whatever. I mean, realistically, I have, kind of your classic college education.
What would you do if you didn't think you could fail?
And that's my life. That's why Scott is sharing that.
Yeah.
That's my life. So I was kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And realistically, I worked in professional and youth development as far as socialization. Social, emotional, educational development outside of the educational sector. What many people would consider to be kind of a pseudo desk job. Working with youth and young adults and some professional groups. And I ran the Jeep business as a side hustle because probably like Tony, I really enjoyed working mechanically because that wasn't something I was doing with regularity elsewhere. Let alone, I mean, a lot of people may or may not be aware that I actually did ministry and specifically youth ministry for 10, 15 years. So kind of a unique blend, but then I absolutely wanted to go to the garage, turn up something hard, as far as music was concerned, and get grimy, dirty, and do the work and build the Jeep and push the limits in that regard, And that's where where we started, we talk a lot about opportunity. I started to become more opportunistic and, pursue a truck and a trailer and, when most people
tools that you
tools need. And understand, I think one of the biggest differences, and I do talk about a good bit of this American Hustle wise, but my ambition was just kind of came in typically a little earlier than other people. So when I talk about procuring a tow rig and a trailer, I was doing that around 21. Whereas most 21-year-olds are trying to figure out how to get to Cancun Beach for spring break of sorts, right? When we were talking about...
that comment about what would you do if you thought you couldn't fail?
Yes.
I was doing both.
Yeah? You're doing both?
Absolutely trying to plan those vacations and trying to build stuff and do stuff that I shouldn't be doing.
And that's fine. I think that, and that's, I always tell people like, that was all I did was just... I wasn't trying to do the, I did do a really cool wheeling trip, but my wheeling trip or my vacation was to the Ozarks. You know what I mean? My spring break in college was to the Ozarks because I could be frugal with a timeshare and we rented a Nissan Pathfinder.
That's actually really fun. I am envious of that experience.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I just wasn't doing the stereotypical things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I remember my dad telling people that because I'm always in the garage and all my spare cash went into my car, he didn't have to worry about me too much because I wasn't out getting into mischief.
That's what I said. If my worst vice was, some of these other pursuits, I think I'm doing okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'm doing okay in that regard. And that was it went into tools. It went into... obviously I was married pretty young by current cultural standards. I was doing investment assets at that age, pretty young. And so those things are just a little bit different than, again, some other vices or expectations and I get that people out there, what is it? Variety is the spice of life. Okay. I mean, I see variety in the Jeep community as like restorations and performance. And then I see the minutia amongst the resto mods and the minutia amongst the performance and then do the podcast, but it's all Jeep related, right?
Yes.
Whereas we were just talking this morning with, I was actually talking about kind of our weekend activity. I can see where serial entrepreneurs want to create this activity over here and then come over here and do something completely different because they want that variety, that spice.
Yeah.
For me, I'm always like, I'm really good with like focused pursuits.
Yeah.
I'm not the most focused individual, but focused pursuits I get.
Yeah.
So you were talking about what did you do for a Klondike Bar then, Jeffrey?
So I'd say Jeep specifically related, the most
or
recent,
automotive, either way.
Yeah. Let's Jeep specifically related. What I did that I think is valuable is not how I paid for the parts, but how I installed the parts.
Okay.
And it's what led me to working here, honestly, is when I bought the lift kit for my current Jeep, and I had never done suspension work, but it was taking forever to come in because of COVID things. And
it was 2021. I
Yeah.
look back at 2021 and I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah,
For a lot of reasons.
It was a nightmare for you guys. It was a nightmare for me, waiting all that time for a manufacturer making false promises that products were coming in.
I love that
American
you're now
Hustle.
employed here and like you see what we actually deal with.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
yeah, I get it.
And it's so hard to communicate that in an honest, not not it's hard to be honest with our customers, but like I really empathize and I'm like, yes, this sucks. I want these parts to be here sooner. I want this to go faster for you.
I mean, it was one of those things that the shop was busy. By the time the parts came in, it was going to be another several weeks out before I could get in for service. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take the parts and I'll do it myself. I'll figure it out. And so from a Friday late night, I pulled in my driveway with it, with all the parts and the tires, and I went to town, started on it, worked for a few hours Friday night, worked on Saturday in a gravel driveway essentially, and got this put together. Drove it back to the shop to talk to Scott about something else, and next thing I know, I was working here. I'm not sure what happened, but that's what I did for Jeep parts. As I worked in the dark, in gravel, on a lift kit that I had no business installing at that time.
Yes. I like adversity. I really like when people are able to overcome adversity. And I started in the gravel. It's what a lot of people, again, they make false expectations or perceptions. I started in the gravel. I started in the dirt. I actually, and honestly, anytime we've hired somebody or had a part-time worker or an interim worker, I almost always start them on floor work.
Yeah.
Which I think you experienced as well.
A little bit. Yeah.
When I think it's you have to learn to crawl before you walk and walk before you run. And I mean, you worked on lifts off a lift pretty early.
Well, I think, and in retrospect, I can now understand why my dad was frustrated, because I would go work in my girlfriend, now wife's, driveway with a tiny garage and literally change stuff in the stone, in the gravel. And my dad used to get frustrated because we had a full shop at home. But for some reason I kept changing U-joints and doing my Jeep work at her house.
Well, I mean, I think I know why you were doing it at her house, but
But I and like I said, I can kind of see him shaking his head at this point, going, "What you doing?" But I value those experiences and that learning and that adapting of that experience, because I had a better opportunity at home than most with automotive stuff. But I still went and did the dumb way.
Yeah. Did it the hard way, right? Uphill both ways, pushing a boulder.
Mainly because just trying to find what I did, and that's a great building block. Like you said, you need to crawl first to try to appreciate when you can walk or run. And if you get set in one direction and you only think, well, I can only do A to B to C, that's a limiting factor, because sometimes C blew up and you have to jump over it to D, and you might have to pull F in to make it happen so you can get down the alphabet. Right. And if you go in and you only, I always have this and I always have that, and now I don't have it anymore. You just kind of like,
the string charts that are on the wall, and you're just going everywhere when you're looking at like the crime shows, and you have no idea what all these strings mean. Yeah, that's Scott's brain.
That was an analogy there, right? But I have a full appreciation for adapt and overcome, right? Yes. Which is when we have worked hard for our Jeep parts, it then creates perspective. And when we do encounter an obstacle, we can pivot versus being paralyzed. There's a lot of people in their workplaces who get paralyzed in the process and go, well, I don't know what to do now that I don't have this X, Y, and Z tool. Now I don't have this software. Now that I don't have this access to this line of logistics. I mean, and that's the thing for us with part sourcing. I've personally prided myself on is we don't have a singular stream of parts logistics. And I remember during 21 and 22 and pushing into 23, when there were so many challenges with parts sourcing, a good friend and listener and customer, Kevin, him advertising or for us or kind of tagging me into posts going, hey, this Simpson Family Jeeps, Neil, he can really find these parts and pieces. And that's because we could sidestep, we can find other channels to become successful and to get people their parts, versus Jeffrey's experience where he ordered from a major e-commerce distributor
and it was
retailer.
Important to note, someone that we never saw a delay from before. We never expected it.
No. I was actually talking about, he did an e-commerce purchase from a big box store.
Oh,
Yeah.
And they lied to him. They said his part's going to be him
for
10 months.
Yeah.
10 months.
It was
okay.
stupid.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it was when you ordered, it said it was available.
yes.
You order and then you wait and you wait and wait and then you call in. Oh yeah, it's actually on back order. It'll be in the next week or two. Wait a week or two, call back in. Oh no, it's sorry, it got pushed back another week. It'll be to you.
So our redeeming moment.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Our redeeming moment in this was when Jeffrey had put an order in with us, which was with Fox Motorsports, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
For our distribution purposes. He had also put in just a little tchotchke item that, we don't.
It was a dead pedal.
It was a dead pedal for his, just a little accessory.
I remember
item.
that
And he
now.
did that through an e-commerce, big, well-known e-commerce. We at least made sure his lift
Probably
kit
the
showed
top
up soon.
brand, the brand that sends out the catalogs constantly.
Constantly sends out catalogs,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And has laid off most of their workforce at this point, but that's none of our business.
Right. Yep.
So, so as far as we're concerned, we did deliver his parts before. He was just patient enough. He was just dealing with the quagmire that was the Jeep industry.
It was a good setup for his employment.
Well, and honestly though, that plays into what would you do for the Klondike Bar, because if you understand that you got to have patience sometimes, and it takes some time to build up for those parts. You can't necessarily do everything at once. When I started the build on the Gladiator, it was, I want to start with the tires, wheels, and lifts so that I can fit the tires and wheels I want on there. And then after that, I'd make the changes over time, because I can't afford to do it all at once. I have other priorities that I need to spend that money on.
Right.
But I'm still doing extra things to be able to afford that, or making sacrifices to be able to enjoy that hobby. So that's the type of stuff that you do for that.
So I was going to say, I know that at one point in time, just kind of a fun, what would you do for a Klondike bar? I actually had my first Jeep, and at that time, my cousin was doing some part-time work for me, and we were doing an engine swap in a different, and more or less my second Jeep, in a Cherokee. And so he is, or was, I guess, a GM guy. He really loved, he had Camaros and V8s and stuff. And he had done all this work for me, and I had begun the process of, I'd sold off the engine and transmission, the transfer case. I had done all this cool stuff to my first Jeep. And when I was done with it, because it had some electrical issues and whatnot, it was an 87 YJ, so that's par for the course.
Yeah.
When I got done parting out kind of its biggest pieces that had the biggest value, I had this shell left over, and he had done all this part-time work as far as helping me do some of the swaps, and we'd used his garage. I ultimately ended up giving him that Jeep and transferring the title and everything. And his game plan was, honestly, I think he used it in a two-wheel drive. He had like a turbo 350 and a V8, dropped it down in, didn't care if the wiring worked. At that time, that was a long time ago, and so he didn't really care. We didn't have the fuel injection we have now.
Yep.
And his interest was just to hot rod it around, So that was kind of an interesting way that he worked for Jeep parts, but a Jeep itself, know. So what are some ways that you guys have bought a Jeep? Is there anything that you've done? Scott, you are the master of chess pieces.
Right? I think he needs to talk about how he got his Gladiator after basically manifesting that into an existence.
Really, it was an impressive manifestation.
I mean, well, let's go back. I've literally hauled scrap for Jeep
That's true.
purchase.
Well,
I've begged, borrowed, and I haven't stolen.
No,
but I batted
your
eyes.
phrase used to be batting eyes. Well,
Yes.
if I bat my eyes,
Yes.
and I do this, I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go again,
there's so much truth to that.
right?
because I'm not a good planner. I will admit that. So when I suddenly see something that I really want, I have to then figure out how am I going to get that. So if it is a parts I need to hawk, or suddenly I'm doing services for people I don't really want to do, but I will do it to get that extra $50. Not that kind of service.
Oh, there's
Hold
a
the
meme.
Jeeps.
There's a meme out there. I
Yeah.
was said there's going to be a number of people lined up
car
to
work.
car services.
I don't like doing extracurricular car work.
Yeah.
Outside of the
the
workplace.
the
It's got to
funny
be in the
thing
car.
It has to be in the car at this point, Scott. I was going to say, a lot of people do side hustles, right?
Yeah.
And we're not great side hustles. I mean, other than actually helping each other out, which is
Right.
kind of an interesting. That's kind of the funniest piece is much of this business and the core people involved actually spend a lot of time helping each other out.
That's true.
I was thinking about that last night because we all get along pretty well and we all know what each other are capable of producing. Right.
Yep.
And we're constantly disappointed when we have to go with subcontractors of other volitions.
Right.
Terrible.
Right.
So we all use our strengths and our tooling to support each other likewise. You
Yeah.
know? But yes, so when you're not bending over the car at the curb for $50. So what were you saying? Because that's not the side hustle you were talking about.
Anyway,
Electrical wiring. For folks who are listening, Scott has so I always said we as a group are better at wiring vehicles in general, right? As just as a broad thing. And it's one of the things that Scott is pretty has an aptitude
I guess
for.
I'm good at doing things where people think magic exists.
So you're not going to get shocked from his shockingly good experience.
Badooch.
terrible.
So yeah,
like
that's the thing.
electrical, steering columns, transmissions, transfer cases, their engines. There's magic in there for
Right.
the Joe average.
Right. And even Jim Bob's garage, right?
yeah,
Regular old Jim Bob's garage.
Yes. So thankfully, I was raised by a machinist. So you look at everything in small details and you do everything to a certain minutia. Things are going to be okay.
Right.
And you just have to be not scared of taking something apart. And I remember one of the earliest memories is taking stuff apart and I could not put it back together because I had no idea what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But still learn something by taking that apart and not being scared.
Yes.
Again, what could you do if you didn't think you could fail?
Yes.
Kind of scenario. That's important. So because of that, I was able to, kind of craft my skill set to be able to do the things that were not comfortable for Joe Average to do. So if their transfer case needed a slip yoke eliminator, for example, I was
me.
I was able to take it
Originally.
apart and put it back together. Brake lines, most people could not flare brake lines. They went and got all the sticks of line and made erector sets.
So I'm gonna interrupt you because I think it's important to toot Scott's horn for him because as a purveyor of big picture experiences, a lot of people think that they can do these things, right? And the reason why they think magic exists, and so don't forget where you were going with your story, but I think it's important to come in as the narrator and share and say, because there is the small details will separate the qualified individual from the average Joe. And so average Joe can go to AutoZone and pick up a nice flexible brake line
or
and
1,100 pre-made 3-foot sections.
correct.
And
Eventually get them put together enough to make the vehicle go down the road. And they
Yes.
feel good because fixed is fixed, right?
Yeah.
There's that sentiment out there. Fixed is fixed. But there is then a difference of whether or not you have done it with excellence, right? And so oftentimes folks in the backyard put the transfer case back together, but they miss that one little shift detent ball.
They put it
and
back
where
together
sits.
better.
And it's not actually better. And after 2 or 3 runs out in the off-road, world, the transfer case grenades again.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not their fault.
oh no,
No, it's that
Oh.
it's that Jeep. Jeeps are just junk,
Yes.
or that transfer case was garbage, or they didn't clean the mating surface of the adapter for the, for the transmission to transfer case. And so the leak there is just because, oh, well, these engineers, they didn't know what they were doing. No, it's because you didn't prep your surface sufficiently. And so,
Or you're using the wrong product
or you're using the wrong product.
Because you didn't know what you didn't know.
until you know it.
There
Yep.
it is.
So that's I think is where Scott's thing is, that people think there's magic because they miss that little fine detail piece, or they're moving too fast, or they're looking at too much of the big picture and going, hey, I just want to get back out on the trail.
Yeah.
Where there are aspects you authentically enjoy the mechanical build
Yep.
for Jeep parts. I authentically enjoy the business build and the human experience build, if you will, for Jeep parts.
Yes.
Right. All right. So you were going somewhere.
So any which way, I was able to incrementally, slowly keep basically making, you start with a paper clip, and then you get this, and then you get that kind of scenario. So I was able to get into a JK for the right price. I was able to build it appropriately and enjoy it for a long period of time. And the only fault I guess I have is I never build anything to sell. Personal projects. I put everything into it, every dime, every thought.
We're not good used car salesmen.
No, terrible. And which means that
Which Jeffrey really was a used car salesman
He
at one
was.
time.
I was.
yes,
I was.
No, he was a new car. It was a new dealership, right? A lot of people
new and
go.
used.
so
Yeah,
you sell
yeah.
both then.
Yeah,
Anyway,
he sold both for Jeep parts.
so
I did.
So I had, always make goals growing up. I think everyone does, and the biggest difference of chaining those goals or not is, do you allow yourself to actually achieve that goal? So it's so easy to go and say, hey, I'd really like to do blah, like I'd really like to take this trip. And then, okay, well, then that date arrives. Are you actually prepared to make that trip?
Mm-hmm.
And then when it gets hard, do you actually stick it out to make the trip happen?
Mm-hmm.
Most people at that point give up and they say, it was a good try. I'll do it next year.
Mm-hmm.
And we all do it. It's
Cleveland
human.
Browns fans, we're looking at you.
Yeah.
It hurts. I understand it.
No
They could
comment.
just learn how to play golf. Anyway.
Sports balls, Scott. Sports balls.
So I had this loose goal of having a Gladiator by my 40th birthday. And I think when I actually made that goal, I didn't 100% believe I could do it. But, over the course of life, I see Jeff's enjoying his Gladiator, and we have them through the shop, and I get to drive them around. And the more and more I get entrenched into this, that this is actually something I really want to do. And I remember sitting down with my wife and going and looking at the prices of stuff and going, how are we going to ever afford to do that? Well, part of that is just believing that you can and being dumb enough to not give up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to sell my Jeep to a good friend and customer of the business. He saw the value of all my thoughts and parts, and was able to get that money out of that. I was able to sell another project to yet another customer and get some money out of that, which I had actually done sweat equity for. So I didn't have a big investment on, so I was able to take that funds and kind of move it around. And
You had sweat equity into acquiring that project.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's valuable to say that when you originally got that project a few years earlier,
Yes.
that was all just based on your brain and your volition.
Yes.
What you were willing to do for
a Klondike bar.
Klondike Bar.
Yeah.
All right.
So any which way, I was able to do that and kind of let that dream kind of peter out in form of this other dream. And then literally at the right moment, at the right time, my truck that I currently own came available at a good price, arguably better than most for what it is option-wise. Had all the qualifiers I was looking for, and I was able to walk in and put almost half down on that truck, which really blew the salesman's mind. It was really funny. In the negotiations, they were like, "Oh, you need gap insurance," and he's like, Oh, you actually don't. So that allowed me, because we're not making millions of dollars. We're all in it for the long haul. So I could not afford $1,000 truck payment
Right.
a month.
Right.
No stretch of the imagination is that able to do, because I'm already eating mac and cheese, no big screen TV, no cable,
Right.
that kind of stuff. We're already kind of down to the bare basics because
of how we prioritize everything else.
and likewise, that's how I also did my 36 build. As I was for a long time had ambitions of wanting an early Ford. That was what was in the magazine. That's what kind of lusted after. And lots of people make excuses and they go, well, I can't have that, so I'll settle and I'll go get this, which I've done a lot of settling. Does not make you happy in the end.
Yep, you don't leave fulfilled on that one.
And so, you sometimes have to give up other projects or let the other things go that you were never prepared to do because you really want to attain that goal. And the saddest part is when you've sacrificed so much and you have put in all that you have, there's still somebody going to go on the first time out when you put gas in your car, go, hey, you gonna paint that? Yep. I might have to do it myself with a brush, but yeah, we have ambitions too.
Yeah.
It's just you can't give up. You can't think you're going to fail, because then you will fail. So,
Jeffrey, do you have any? And I was gonna say the last piece on Scott's, Klondike Bar, of purchasing a vehicle and all of his chess pieces to move around for that. I was gonna say there's absolutely people who have only one vehicle in their life.
Crazy.
They've got whatever their priority set is, and it's really not a big deal. They just go down to the local dealership and they take a payment out on a truck and they drive the truck to and from work and they accessorize it for the weekend and they do a little camping, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Right. And Scott, in your story, in your situation, is you're trying to figure out how do you have your cake and eat it too, and you had to sacrifice a couple dreams in the process, a couple projects, a couple things that you put a lot of blood, sweat, and effort into.
That's literally why we called this episode "What Would You Do for a Klondike Bar?" Because it's literally what are you willing to do, or what are you willing to sacrifice, put yourself through? What kind of side jobs are you willing to do that you normally wouldn't do, just to make sure that you make it to that goal. But with that, I think we're pretty much at the end of our episode.
I agree that we are. Next week, we will be bringing in some tech conversation. We'll actually be talking about manual transmissions, the ever popular stick versus auto debate rages on.
Lots of magic in there.
Lots of magic in both.
The millennial anti-theft device.
Yes, that will be the topic you'll be looking forward to. Additionally, this weekend is Halloween for many communities because Halloween actually falls on a peculiar day next week.
Thursday of next week, if I remember right.
Right. And so
a lot of people will be trick-or-treating on Thursday. Some places are actually doing this Saturday, November 2nd.
Saturday.
No, so
this
November
is the
2nd.
26th.
Yep.
Well, so we actually have the Scania local business candy crawl. So if you are somebody who is local to us and you've not ever been into our facility, it'll be open where we'll be handing out some candy for local kids who are trick-or-treating.
You may or may not see some people that you recognize from the show.
That's true.
Here, and some of the builds that we've told you about.
Yes. So stop in for that. Jeffrey will be representing down in Crawford County at the Meadville Halloween Parade, same night, the 26th.
No pressure.
So there are a number of activities going on. So if you're one of the people out, I hope you have fun decorating your Jeep and participating in some of these activities. Obviously, Halloween is almost like a multi-weekend experience at this point. Of course, Halloween is pushing for number one in the hearts of many of American households.
Absolutely.
Weirdos.
Especially Jeff's.
Especially. And you still can't dethrone Christmas, in my opinion. But
I honestly, I came up with a shirt idea that I'm not going to reveal on air, but it's related to Thanksgiving for Scott. But
Yeah, I'm Team Thanksgiving.
He's
I
Team
know,
Turkey.
and I am Team Halloween, so
And I'm Team
I came up
Christmas.
with a shirt that I need to have made somehow. I don't know if it's something that we can do in house or if it's going to be something different, but
Oh my goodness.
I really want to do the shirt just to really enjoy that.
If you enjoy hearing some of our weekend updates, you're going to want to hang in through the outro and just kind of hang out on the side and hear how our weekends went. But if you have any other questions or anything of particular interest, you can reach us at 440-855-2100. That's a text only number, 855-2100. Don't call that. You have to call our actual facility number, 440-813-3663, extension 1. When you start to hear the lovely vamping of the voicemail, it's not actually voicemail. It is a menu. Hit extension 1. I've heard that from a couple people recently. So, I got your voicemail. We don't have voicemail, folks. It's 2024. So just hit extension 1, and then it will kind of prompt you around from there appropriately. Or you can always email us. We've got all the emails listed on our website, sfj4x4.com. Lots to do. It's been a fun one. What would you do for a Klondike bar? Jeep on.
I heard a goat again.
I don't know what you're talking about. There's no goats. It's your imagination.
So I got highly distracted by the fact that I think that we're going to start a shed business now.
Yeah,
Oh.
I saw that.
Heck yeah. Well, before we even talk about that, so I didn't show either of you guys this, but
What is that?
so one of our good customers came in to pick up their Jeep.
Oh, today was supposed to be a taste test.
It was.
Ah.
And so Saturday, a customer shows up with this ginormous.
That will hold a
I mean,
lot of
That looks
sewing.
like a hot tub.
I know. It's insane. I can't believe how big it is. And this is filled with grandma's cookies.
So this is your
I think.
standard for our.
I thought there was sewing
grandma's
equipment in there.
cookies.
We'll find
the
out.
Danish, right? There should be thimbles and
Yes.
a sewing needle. It is the Danish cookies grandma tin that is so
Yes.
apt for.
That one
grandma's
is when you're
couch
really
to-
committed to
I lo-
repairing clothing.
I mean, the
I-
sold sewing machine.
I didn't even
should
know
be
they
in
made
there.
them this big.
Did you buy them for us last year?
No, I did.
You did.
Yeah.
Didn't he get the smaller tin?
Yeah,
I
it's
think
right next
Chip
to you.
does. It's still in
So
the
you
shop.
can get yet an even smaller tin from Dollar Tree or
I
Dollar
thought
General.
somebody brought us the small tins last year. Did they not?
No.
We need to put a couple sewing.
Oh, this is like going to be like the Russian nesting dolls. We can actually put.
It's got
this-
cookies in it.
Oh my gosh! What
I
that is?
wasn't ready.
Is there
Hang
a
on.
weight on this? Is this 10 pounds of Danish cookies? Here it is.
probably.
4 pounds. It is 4 pounds of Danish butter cookies.
They're good.
My mouth is salivating. Oh my gosh. That. Now put the lid back on real quick.
I don't want to. I want the cookies.
Well, you can have more cookies, but I'm gonna make like a Danish cookie snowman out of the tins. Now,
oh, so we got to go to Dollar Tree and get the little one.
we should get the little one now,
Well, that's fun.
or like I said, the Russian nesting doll. I did not realize that the can in my left hand was 1.5 pounds. That's actually pretty legit.
They're actually different brands.
What? Oh,
Who knew there was such diversity in sewing equipment tins?
they look exactly the same. They're blue and they're gold.
I don't know.
I
They
wouldn't
know what's up.
Royal Dansk
Versus
and Biska
Yeah.
by appointment to the Royal Danish Court. Is what it says.
So I hear we're eating.
I wonder if
royal
the Dollar
cookies.
Tree can is a different brand yet.
This is like our coffee cake scenario all over again. We're now
Do
we're
they?
being.
So do they make one that's yet bigger? Do we have like the?
Oh,
popcorn
Are you trying to
challenge?
sit in one, Scott? Like,
I
what
don't
is
know.
your what?
He
what
I
He
do
wants
you
a full stock pot
Here.
size of cookies.
have
Jeff,
questions.
since this is what you can live on, I have one cookie and
Yeah.
like blowed up to the size of a
I
whale.
would like one more cookie at some point.
Jeff could eat
if
the
you
whole
can
tin.
pry it out of
I
Jeff's
probably
hand.
could.
Wow.
Okay.
All right. So, how far do you think we got on the shed?
Well, so what's really fun is when you got there, we had what? Four by four runners.
We got the
just
four
laying in
4x4
the grass.
runners laying in the grass.
Not
Now,
even
I gotta
perfect-
tell you-
not even laid out
Wait a
correct.
second. I'm gonna go way back. I'm gonna go back. My heart was so full when you and your kids came rolling in on your four-wheeler, and I was like,
That was
this
awesome.
This is what like hopefully the next 20, at least the next 20 years of my life is going to be like.
Really funny because my son goes, is this where they're going to live? Yeah, buddy, I've been telling you that for a while. We've been driving by. Ooh, they're really close.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. And that was, but you know, in the little kid world, right? I mean, it's a million miles away, but that's when my kids were there. They were like, they rode here on the four-wheeler? I'm like, yeah, it's literally just like maybe a mile.
As the
if
crow
that.
flies.
Yeah. As a crow flies, it maybe is a mile. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah. And then we have Derek right around the corner. And my sister's right around the corner. Like,
Yeah. We accidentally, not on purpose, got a little community going.
right?
Yeah.
Go figure. But yeah, that was really fun to have you guys come in. But so you came rolling in.
So the kids, we were having a relaxing, not doing a whole lot weekend at that exact moment. And the kids came in, they're like, of course, Aiden's already got his helmet on. He's got his goggles on. They've lusted this whole plan while I'm chilling out in the house. Hey, we really want to go on the four-wheeler, and it's been a really long time since we did. Okay, that's fair. So I moved lawnmower, and I'm like, okay, I know the battery's going to be at least low on this thing. It's dead as a doornail. Like, you turn on the switch, nothing happens. I'm like,
fair.
Okay. Pull the choke.
You know what you need? You need a NOCO.
I do. I need power to the shed, too.
Oh, it's in the shed.
So I pull the cord. It fires right up. Back it out of the shed, and of course they're all primed and ready to go. And I make one little slow lap around the backyard, and both of them are going, "Go faster, Dad! Go faster!" We've got to give it a moment. And I look down, and the gas gauge is like on empty.
Big empty.
It has not had new gas since at least prior to winter of last year.
Oh, wow.
I'm a great maintenance person.
You're poor. The vehicles you don't care about.
I can tell you, Kawasaki builds a really robust four-wheeler. You can literally not care about it at all and give it like no love, and it will continue to function.
Right.
So I go ahead and I put gas in it, and then of course it dies, because that's what it does.
You gave it too much love.
And so we get it fired back up, have to pull start it again. It was really funny as I kept pulling it wouldn't start, and Evie's like, "Dad, the key switch is off." "Oh, that'll fix it."
Good thing Evelyn was there.
So I turned it on, and I let it run on the choke, and I go up and I close up the garage, and I check, make sure they close the house door and some other stuff. And they are not any wiser yet, because it's important to note, this poor four-wheeler has not left my property in probably 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
It has just been pushing snow and hauling stuff in the yard, where prior to that, we used to ride it all the time, me and my wife, pre-kids. So I'm thinking to myself, like, I know the guys are supposed to be working over at Neil's property, and it's only got half a tank of fuel at this point. That's all the can had. I've rode it to Amboy before and filled it up.
Right.
I think I'm going to do that and blow their minds.
Yeah.
So we pull out on the road, and you could see them. Whoa.
What are you doing?
What are you doing? And so we
You're
buzz.
a rebel without a cause,
Right.
Dad.
Yeah. And Nate's like, "Does this have registration to do this?"
Your kids would have.
That's funny.
My kids would be like, "My dad's a criminal." Oh, we're breaking the law again. Vehicular laws.
So anyway, we go up and like cross, 20, and we go down past Derek's and hang a right. And immediately we turn the corner, and it backfires once. And then he's like, "What was that?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think I know what that was, but we're just going to continue on like that didn't happen. So we finally get up to the railroad tracks, and suddenly it's like you took the spark plug off. Came down to like no power.
Huh.
And I'm like,
Oh dear. Now I'm pretty far from home. I mean, not the furthest, but you
No.
really want to push it back.
So I'm thinking like, well, as long as we get up to the property, like I will guilt Jeff into giving me a ride back to the house, so I can get the truck and trailer and we can get this thing home. And we get up there, we pull in, you guys are getting all set up, and it just sits there and idles beautifully the whole
It really
time.
did.
Real well behaved. I'm like, oh, we'll just let it run, And so then we go and investigate your property, and then we get back on the 4-wheeler. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go up to Amboy and actually put high test in it now, because who knows how old
Right,
that gas is.
Try and even out that octane a little bit.
So we do that, and to going down Amboy, it backfired a little bit. I found if I played with the throttle up and down,
I was say, I bet it's one of the needles for the carb imitator.
I'm not sure, but we backfired our way all the way home.
Oh, it did.
Put it in the garage and put the battery tender on it. So
There you go.
Sounds like
I don't-
sounds like a first snow. You'll be
I
figuring
don't
out
know
what's
the
wrong with it
battery's
then.
coming back though, because when I shut it off from the ride, and it had ran at that point for what, probably an hour
Yeah.
or better. The fan nobody was home. The battery
just
took no
immediately
charge, so I think that battery's done.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was different. The kids had a blast. It was good to see you guys and pick on you as normal. And
If you were in the Discord, you immediately, because
Yeah.
right after you left, Neil's like, "Oh, Scott putting you on Discord." I'm like, "What?" Pull it up. Sure enough, you
Yeah.
put that
Yeah.
picture
What
up.
was
Right.
really funny is as I was doing that, they're like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm just doing Scott things."
Yeah. I was like, oh, I thought you were texting your wife, being like, "Hey, we need one of these sheds next." No, you were like, "Oh, here, the Patreons want to see what you guys are doing this weekend." You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, so what do you think? I mean,
So my bet is that it's a floor. Davey has all the faith in you guys, and it says you have a shell.
we have a we,
Davey said it was framed. You said it was a floor and maybe a wall. And this was a 12 by 16 foot house.
It's a 2-car shed.
so I love that you and your kids were like, "It's a garage. Where's the garage door?" Like, or whatever, like putting vehicles in, because you would put vehicles in
Have
this. Yes,
put
you
vehicles
have
in
one.
shed.
How big is your shed?
I
Your
don't know. We
garage?
should figure that
We
out.
should actually measure yours.
But it'll
Because you
fit up-
have a truck in there.
well, not currently.
Well,
but,
you did.
up to this point, every year it's where it's gone. It will fit a full size long bed 1/2-ton pickup truck
Yes, in your quote unquote shed.
in my shed,
Well,
or a lawnmower in a 4-wheeler off season.
well, Jeffrey did a beautiful job designing this shed, and obviously it mimics my house.
And plans could be had on, contact Jeff.
No, we're selling this shed,
Right?
I'm
You're
telling
not
you.
buying the plans. You're buying the whole
You're buying
shed.
the whole shed at this point. 'Cause
Yeah.
This thing is a monster. It's so awesome.
What's really funny is because my wife was at work. I told her about our escapades, and I was like, "Yeah, you're building a 2-car shed," and told her the dimensions. She's like, "Oh yeah, you could do that."
It was, and largely lumber prices have started to, retract some,
Thank
right?
goodness.
So Jeff and I were quote unquote reminiscing over the last 3 years or so of how high some lumber
Yeah, this
prices.
would be in a $30,000 shed at one
base,
point.
Oh, yeah, it was crazy.
But
I would have probably had to design it a lot different.
yeah, it's very robust. It's super solid. It's very exciting to be moving along, and Jeff did a great job because he actually mimics my house. And I have the engineer is coming out tomorrow. I've got to head out there and hang out with the engineer because we need to move on to the next big stages of the house build. So we needed, so we can mimic that house build with the shed. And I had a ton of fun, honestly.
It was a
doing
good day.
It was a good day. The
Yeah.
weather was spectacular.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It is.
I got sunburnt in mid-October. Like, what?
Yes. 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 We have, it is the foundation is entirely built. The flooring is entirely done and trued. The framing is entirely done and trued up.
Windows are framed in, doors framed in.
So basically, you're down to rafters and
So we're down to rafters and to, sheath the outside of it.
Yep.
very good.
So yeah, it's pretty exciting in that regard.
So me and Jeff could build one in a day then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I think that I'm gonna ignore you. First of all,
Apparently, our new countdown clock beeps at us when we run out of time. I didn't know that.
Davey's looking around. Look at Davey looking around. He is so confused as to Savage was going. He's looking to defuse the bomb. Did you see how quickly he responded?
He did.
That
I'm
was
proud
awesome.
of him. I
That
don't think he was looking to defuse it. He was determining if he had to run out of the
he
building.
needed to run. The look on his face, I think he was deciding
He's not
every
cut-
man for himself.
He's not cutting blue wire. No.
Oh, he's.
Well, that's funny.
So if I would have had, if I would have had appropriately purchased the product, so that we could have just picked it up. But honestly, Jeff and I went and wandered around the Home Depot with our cut list. We actually had a pretty nice time there. Thank goodness we did, because a lot of that wood. Now, I have done pickup wood before and had good experience with it.
Yeah, I think they tried to
I-
pick decent without.
I mean, there was some crooked
Holy
boards
cow.
coming out of the bunks Sunday morning.
And
so.
we settled for a lot of boards that we took, but it was incredibly bad. Some of those boards.
So I'm looking forward to being able to move some of the garden stuff out into that space and really, because we were talking about turning our hobbies into into our career. I really do miss. Well, first of all, my wife has obviously continued to love gardening and the flower kind, but I really miss vegetable gardening, and I really look forward to when I'm not building so often and I can go out and start growing again.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So
I like how you had friends and family just stopping out periodically throughout the day, and just amazed by how quickly we were able to put that together.
Well,
too.
and I think it's what's I mean, and I have updated people on the house build over the last 2 years, and I was actually having you out and helping. It's amazing. It means so much to me how many people have helped in this process, and that is kind of who I am in at life, is that I'd rather put in that sweat equity, and share that time, and share that knowledge source, and have those experiences with people, and be able to eat together, and to share stories, and to get injured together, and to labor, and to create. And I just think
Make
that
mistakes
is
together.
and stare at the grass where it's not even remotely level. It's up, down, high, low.
and be like, how are we going to get through this? And Jeffrey's like, you know what? I once built a shelf into a mountainside. Or not a shelf. I once built a garage into a mountainside. I think I know how to do this. My grandfather once taught me this trick in the old lands.
Yeah.
it was basically that. Yeah.
That was basically that. Jeffrey, do you have anything valuable to share with us before we depart for
No,
your
I mean,
Friday,
other
Saturday?
than that, getting to spend the long day out building, which is always fun, and then relaxing watching the football game. I was pretty happy with the weekend. We did obviously Halloween stuff on Saturday. We did some of that, preparing for that parade. But otherwise, it was just a relaxing weekend.
I will share the one little piece. I mean, I had a spectacular weekend. It felt forever because it was just so full of very good stuff. But humorously, my sister paid for quote unquote professional photography, right? We always talk about having Savage come out and do pictures for us and whatnot. But my sister, wanted to go in a little bit of different direction. She has a friend who does photography as well. So that's cool. Like spread it around, So she decided to, coordinate this friend and get them involved. So how like a lot of people go to, they go somewhere special, maybe to a sunflower farm or an old rustic building or something to get their pictures taken. We see it all the time on the internet. My family opted to have our pictures taken in front of the old family junk in my sister's shared homestead.
Perfect.
And so, so the old rustic building is actually our family's corn crib, or the old rustic shed that my parents had built 40 some years ago. The old Massey Ferguson made it into the picture with the kids on it.
Of course.
And so like other people take these bougie pictures, in their fancy clothes out by this rustic farm or apple orchard or whatever. And here we're like well, we're just going to use the junk we have laying around and take our family
Opportunistic.
photos.
Sounds
you
great to me.
know? It was a riot is what it comes down to. So I'm not sure how many of those pictures will make it out to the public, but I'll definitely have to share with you guys. We attempted to color coordinate to a degree. Pretty much everyone in my family wore flannel except for me. But I did have
That's
I
backwards.
wasn't ready.
right. So you'll have to wait and see some of those pictures. But it was kind of humorous to. My dad kept pushing to get pictures taken in front of the broken down Jeeps. And
Your mom wasn't having
that
it.
was not happening. He got vetoed, and he would like bring it up again, and he got vetoed, and he'd bring it up again, and it was just like, and they're not even staged well. They just are like shoved into the barn, in a holding.
Is there
pattern.
any other way?
Just so since you're talking about pictures too, I did take pictures throughout the build process. I'm going to send those to you so you can put them in
Awesome.
your house build album.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe we throw some on for Patreons and stuff. But
Yes.
there's Scott, so you can see how far we made it.
Yeah, and Jennifer took a couple of pictures while she was out as well. But what a cool experience, and so thankful for both obviously Jeffrey, your immense help throughout the process, but even just for popping over and hanging out for a few minutes. That's what it's all about. So.
Yeah, it was really fun to be able to see Scott come out and be a part of that initial just joking and banner session before we really got going.
It's part of the Jeep life.
Yeah.